What really connects a soldier to their flag? Is it the big ideas that history books talk about? Or the quiet, hidden chains of an older, more cynical power? Tonight, we go to the center of a wound that doesn't leave a scar. We fight with belief, not bullets. Not an enemy, but the very thing you promised to serve. What you're about to hear is the tale of the merchant's shield. I didn't come for money or the cold comfort of a paycheck. I came for the story. For the quiet stories of bravery, sacrifice, and a purpose that burned brighter than any sun. I stood in front of the flag, which was a bright tapestry of stars and stripes, and I thought I was a part of its promise. I was to protect the farmer in Iowa, the teacher in Maine, and the immigrant who wanted a fresh start. I made a promise to a people, a land, and a breath of freedom. A holy promise written in my bones. But history, my friends, often hides its true face behind the big words of presidents and kings. And geography, that harsh mapmaker of our fate, has a way of taking off the paint that hides the truth. It didn't smell like freedom in the ancient dust of the cradle of civilization, or in the vast emptiness of a remote desert. It smelled like the ledger. It hummed with the quiet, never-ending math of making money and losing money. Picture the Roman legionnaire with his shiny bronze shield in the hot sun. Did he really think he was spreading civilization? Or did he know that he was making it easier for senators to get rich in villas far away from the blood and grit? Think about the British Empire's redcoats, who stood firm in faraway places. Were they champions of enlightenment? Or just the armed guards for the growing power of the East India Company, keeping spice routes and opium fields safe? I didn't look at the map through the lens of history books. I looked at it through the grim reality of my own boots on the ground. I didn't see a country worth defending. Instead, I saw a complicated, interconnected web of black gold, rare earth minerals, banks, and shipping lanes. I realized that I wasn't a knight serving a republic. I was a guard for a vault. A piece on the chessboard didn't move because of the noble hand of justice, but because of the corporation's invisible ink. I was protecting the money of people who don't care about flags or homelands, only making their own territory bigger. That realization marks the first crack in the soul, the moral injury, when it exposes the sacred oath you took as a contract for hired muscle. When you find out that the good you thought you were doing was really just good for business, it hurts not just your body, but also the very core of who you thought you were. It is the heaviest gear we carry, heavier than any rucksack or weapon. It is the weight of the choices we made when the world turned gray, and the reason we fought for it faded into the cynical workings of the market. And how does this knowledge affect a soldier's spirit? It doesn't scream like a bullet wound. It speaks softly. It eats away. It's the sneaky poison that takes the meaning out of sacrifice. Every sunrise in a foreign country, every patrol, and every moment of heightened awareness are all seen through this new, scary lens. The system trained you to do this, to follow orders without asking questions. But when the why behind those orders fades away, the how becomes a hollow echo. You used to be proud of how precise you were, but now it feels like the efficiency of a machine that doesn't know what it's doing or who its master is. Fire and fear forge friendships and bonds that later turn tragically ironic. Yes, you are brothers, but what kind of brothers? For whom? This moral burden is heavier than any physical load. A bullet wound heals and a broken bone heals. But how do you set a broken purpose? How do you stop the bleeding of a broken ideal? It doesn't hurt physically. Instead, it shows up as a deep and widespread sense of disappointment. A cynicism that covers everything you used to hold dear. You go back or you stay, but the experience shatters your view of the world. The Greeks, in their ancient wisdom, called it a wound to the spirit. Now people call it moral injury. A wound that an enemy didn't cause, but by the clash between strong moral beliefs and terrible actions, or in this specific sneaky case, the realization that your virtue was just a tool in someone else's immoral plan. Under the Hindu Kush, or in the heat of the Mesopotamian plains, I learned that the heaviest things we carry aren't in our rucksacks. They're the heavy choices we made when the world turned gray, and the promises of a nation became the profits of a corporation. Moral injury isn't a disease we treat. It's a deeply human experience we must recognize. A sad truth that goes back to the first city-state that sent its young people to die for money instead of ideals. Living with moral injury feels like living in a house where sand replaces the foundation. You still have the walls, the uniform, the rank, and the discipline, but you know that the ground beneath you is moving in the quiet hours of the night. In the Army, we say mission success. But what if the mission is a success for the board of directors, but a failure for the soul? You stand watch over a port or a pipeline. You are a symbol of national strength to the world. But in the history books of the future, you will be a footnote in a quarterly earnings report. People call this moment the Great Disconnect. The soldier realizes at this point that they are the most expensive piece of equipment on a company's books. The Greeks got this. Achilles didn't back out of the fight in the Iliad because he was scared. He did it because he knew he was shedding blood for Agamemnon's pride and greed. Agamemnon was a king who stayed in the tents while men died for his pride. When you realize that you are guarding oil while your brothers and sisters at home are having trouble paying for it, the cognitive dissonance becomes a physical weight. It stays in your chest. It gives the coffee a taste like ash. It makes the "thank you for your service" from a stranger feel like a rock in your shoe. You want to ask them, what service do you mean? The service to you, or the service to the bank that owns your mortgage? So, how do we get through? How does a hero in a Shakespeare play stay alive after fate already written the tragedy? The answer is to take back the story. If the institution used your virtue to make money, you need to get that virtue back now. Moral injury isn't a chemical imbalance. It's a sign that your conscience is still working. It is the birth pains of a new kind of knowledge. History tells us that the strongest voices are often those who have been inside the beast and lived to tell about it. Smedley Butler, a Marine Corps general, figured this out almost 100 years ago when he said, "War is a racket." He didn't stop being a man of honor. He changed what it meant to be honorable. He understood that real service isn't just following orders. It's having the guts to tell the people who still believe the myth the truth. You're not a broken piece of machinery. You are a witness. Your story, or moral injury, is really a map. It shows us where our world has gone wrong. We start to heal by telling these stories, looking at the geography of our service, and looking at the history of our exploitation. Not by forgetting, but by learning. We go from being the merchant shield to the people's truth. You are no longer a piece on the game board. You have left the table. That's the only win that really matters, my friends. If you felt this weight and stood guard over things that weren't yours, know that you're not alone in that silence. This channel is where those stories go. We look at the mind through the lens of history because the same problems we have now were problems for warriors 1,000 years ago. If this story hit home for you, please join us here. Please like this video so that it can reach other people who might feel the same way. Please leave a comment below and tell us about a time when you realized that the why didn't match the what. I read all of them, and your stories are what make this masterclass so great. Tell a brother or sister in arms who needs to hear that their moral injury is really their moral compass trying to find north. Finally, sign up and hit the bell to get notifications. We have a lot more history to learn about and a lot more stories to tell. Don't miss the next part of our quest to learn more about the human spirit. If you are in a dark place and need help right away, please look at the resources I've listed in the description below. Your life is worth more than any book. Keep looking for the truth behind the myth until next time. The first lesson of Mental Masterclass begins here. Out.